You're listening to Science Coast with Mallory Havens and
Chris White.
And our guest today is
Kurt Schackmuth.
Thank you for coming back, Kurt. So we wanted to talk today about how Lewis University went from a history of mostly an aviation school to becoming Lasallian, and then how that guides us as an institution today and how we deliver education and kind of how we view our student population, things along those lines.
And maybe how Lewis is differentiated from other religious organizations.
Sounds good.
As we established in the previous episode, you do not have to be Catholic to work here or go here.
And you're learning all kinds of things about it today.
Yes.
So we'll start with Catholic. So the Diocese of Joliet, the Catholic Diocese of Joliet, was founded in the late 1940s. And the new bishop at the time, Bishop Martin McNamara, discovered that he had a really big diocese with a lot of people, especially people who were interested in going to college because they were coming out of World War II, and there was an interest in pursuing higher education thanks to the GI Bill.
Previously under the Chicago Diocese, and then they're like, ooh, this is too big, branch off?
So the Archdiocese of Chicago, yes.
Okay.
And then the Diocese of Joliet was created in order to just subdivide a bigger.
Right.
And so Bishop Martin McNamara said, you know what, I can't be responsible for this Lewis College of Science and Technology out in Lockport at the time. And he knew that the Christian Brothers were very active in the Chicago area because they already had many high schools in the Chicago area enrolling thousands of students. And so he approached the De La Salle Christian Brothers and said, would you be interested in taking over sponsorship of Lewis College of Science and Technology? And the brothers had actually spent some time thinking about the benefits of having a college so close to all these high schools that they had in Chicago. And the brothers have always had a very practical philosophy about going to where there's a need and being invited. They always wanted to be invited to open a school or to sponsor an institution. And so they received an invitation from the diocese, they studied it and accepted it. And so it was in June of 1960 that 7 Christian brothers set foot on this campus and took responsibility for it and immediately set to work making improvements, enhancing the enrollment, building out the infrastructure, and doing everything that they needed to do to kind of introduce the Lasallian tradition and also make the school successful and viable.
When they took over, since it was science and technology, was it aviation, and what else did Lewis offer at the time?
Yeah, is primarily aviation and then the traditional sciences.
Okay.
Probably the origins of the same science programs that we have today.
What population did the institution serve? Like, where were the students coming from, and who were they primarily?
Yeah, initially primarily just in this area, this immediate area, and primarily men. Aviation carried a pretty significant portion of the enrollment at the time. And then the key thing to know is that when the brothers assumed responsibility, one of the stipulations in their rule, and the rule, Mallory, so the rule is a set of guidelines that a religious order or a religious institute abides by that they all understand this is how they operate.
Okay.
So the rule of the brothers said that they cannot teach women. Initially in the 40s and up until the 40s and the 50s. And when the brothers got here, their rule said that they could not teach women. And so they kind of graduated the women who were currently at the school in 1960 when they arrived. And then we were all male for a number of years because that was what the brothers were only allowed to do, is to teach males. And then when the reforms of Vatican II kicked in the late 1960s, men and women religious orders were allowed to teach the opposite sex. And so then we had women come back to Lewis.
So were women expected to be educated by sisters?
Yes.
Okay.
I know someone who was in one of the first class of women coming back to Lewis back in the day. But so during World War II, wasn't Lewis kind of occupied by the Air Force, if there was an Air Force back then, or if it was just...
I think during World War II, the U.S. government basically shifted institutions to focus on the needs of the country during the war.
Right, which
and
was we
it
needed
wasn't
pilots.
Just Lewis. Yes, right.
Yeah.
And so it was just basically, okay, we're going to focus what's happening here at Lewis University on the needs of the military for the war, And then after the war, didn't we have an admiral for a while who was a former admiral?
Admiral Grassi.
Who became president of the institution prior to the Christian Brothers coming to campus?
Yeah, so Lewis was set up uniquely to support the war effort because we already had the aviation facilities and a runway and airplanes on campus. And so the United States Navy actually became responsible for our campus. They took over. They employed all of our faculty because they were the aviation faculty. And the benefit is that they upgraded the facilities. So when the war was over, 18 months after the Navy came onto campus, they left behind all of their, upgrades to our equipment and facilities. So we really benefited from that.
Nice.
And I think that also helped to firmly establish the aviation program, even though it wasn't always without its challenges in the future. It really solidified aviation as a key program for us.
Well, fast forwarding to today, we are a very multidisciplinary type of an institution with 5 colleges, including a business school, education and social sciences, humanities, fine arts, communications,
and coast,
nursing, health sciences, as well as the traditional sciences and engineering and aviation. And what do you think differentiates Lewis University? Because these are disciplines that basically all other universities have as well. So what makes Lewis University distinct today?
Yeah, I think, it's not always just the disciplines, but it's a couple things. The first is that we are not exclusively a professional school and we are not exclusively a liberal arts college. The crux of our mission and one of the distinctive aspects of who we are is this notion that we are balancing liberal arts and professional education. And so students are taking all of those really great liberal arts courses that provide them these durable skills and these transferable skills, which teach them about humanity and what it means to read and to write and to speak well. And they're pairing that with the professional expertise they get through those disciplines, such as those in Coast and in other colleges. And so that's one way. That's one element of distinction. The other part of it is how we do that education. And that, in many cases, comes from the Lasallian tradition.
Could you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with how we think of ourselves as educators. So first of all, in the Lasallian tradition, we refer to anyone at a university, for example, that is employed here as a Lasallian educator. You don't need to be a classroom teacher to be considered an educator, because we think that everyone plays a role in the life of a student that has the potential to advance their education. And the other aspect of it is how one thinks of oneself as an educator. And so I think one of the key things about who we believe we are as Lasallian educators is it's kind of a disposition. Like, it's more than just a job, it's a calling. And there's this kind of crossing over between what you do during the day and who you are as a person. So this interiority combined with your identity as a teacher or as a professional in education. And so that's something we learned from the brothers. De La Salle taught the brothers that there shouldn't be a distinction between what you do during the day at school as a teacher and who you are as a person and what you do outside of school. And we talk about Lasallian spirituality as an incarnational spirituality, meaning we bring it to life. We bring this sense of our identity to life in our work. And maybe it's fair to say that not everyone who works at a public institution or even other Catholic institutions thinks of themselves in this way. And I think that was one of De La Salle's greatest contributions, is that he elevated the role of the teacher from this person who, in many cases back in France at his time, would hurt students. Corporal punishment was pretty popular back then. Who didn't...
Popular is an interesting choice of words.
It was
common.
It was common, yes. But he elevated the sense that, gosh, teachers are not these lowly people. Teachers are these really, really important people that have this ability to transform lives. And De La Salle wasn't using that language at the time, but that's how we talk about it today, that our faculty and staff have the potential to transform lives through living out their identity as teachers and as people and good human beings and people who care about students.
How I think I bring Lasallian into the classroom is I don't think of myself as the sage on the stage or a gatekeeper. I think my job is to meet students where they are and try to bring them as far along as possible in like a holistic, caring about the whole person kind of way, not just the content I'm delivering. So I try to get to know each of my students and interact with them, and then help them with barriers outside of the classroom that might be inhibiting their education to the degree that I can, or at least get them resources that could help them. And like you said, at a public school or a big state school, many of the professors are just working on research and might teach one class a year, or maybe just one lecture a year, not a whole class like one day or 1 week. And so most of your education isn't coming from the people in the field, whereas at Lewis it is. You're taught by the professors who are also doing the research and engaging in scholarship outside of education.
I've also framed it for myself as part of a social contract that we here at Lewis University have with the broader society. And it's incumbent upon me as an educator to help raise the next generation to be, very helpful, productive parts of the American society. And when I put it that way, it's super important. And it's interesting because there's the religious aspect of it, but we're not really shoving Catholicism down anybody's throat here. So the social contract
We're
part
not
of it,
even telling faculty about. No, I'm kidding.
yeah, but yeah, we hire people like Mallory Havens
who don't know what a saint is.
But so the social contract really comes to the fore for me in the fact that I have an obligation as part of the American society, the world society, the human society, to help educate the next generation and make sure that they're well prepared for the challenges that we face in the world. As a communal, in association, I hate to put it that way, Kurt, but in association with the world.
Yeah, I want to go back to something that Mallory said and then connect it to what you said. We meet students where they are, but we can't meet students where they are if we don't know who they are. And so
Right.
one of the other key areas of Lasallian education is relationship. There has to be a relationship between the teacher or the professional staff member and the student. And that's something else the brothers have really modeled well, is they know students really well. They know them by name, of course, but then they also know their stories and they connect with them. In many of our schools, maybe not so much now as maybe 20, 30 years ago, the brothers would stand at the door and welcome each student as they come into school and shake hands, and they'd make connections. And you see this a lot in the high schools and in the San Miguel schools, where the brothers and the other teachers and administrators, they're connecting with students every day as they walk in, say, hey, welcome, we're glad you're here. They're asking them how things went the other night at the dance, or did you do well in your soccer tournament or whatever. And we do the same thing. We really get wrapped up in the lives of our students in the most appropriate ways possible, right? And that helps to build that relationship, which then makes it easier for us to advocate for that student and help them get that internship that they need, or help them with that research connection with a colleague in another institution, or get that first job. And then we feel like we're more than just teaching them, but we're playing a role and setting them up to go and make a difference in the world, or to achieve some of the goals that you just shared, Chris.
I consciously actually come to class like 5 to 10 minutes early if I can, so I can just chat with the students before it starts. And then I always start every class with, how are you guys? How did yesterday go?
Right.
And get a little bit of feedback before we start, because also it helps to know if your whole classroom is really sour because they all just had a horrible test in some other class, then it's good
Would
to know.
that be Chris's class?
Obviously. I mean, he's teaching astrophysics, but
So after they bomb the test in Chris's class, they come to you and then you cheer them up.
I
So
nurture
unfair.
them back.
This is so unfair.
But so the other way to look at it, though, is the other part is we don't give up on the students that are struggling. So
Right.
when you do have a student who really is struggling, whether they've bombed a test or whether they don't understand a concept or something's not happening in the lab that they think should be happening with an experiment or with a project, we don't easily give up on them. And that's something that is also really unique about Lasallian education, is that there are some other institutions and some other religious traditions where they're looking for the cream of the crop. They're looking for only the 4.0 students. and they're not interested in looking at the potential that a student might have and saying, I'm going to invest some time, I'm going to invest resources in helping you to get to your potential. And so that's the other really great thing about our faculty here at Lewis, is that they don't give up on students, and they put in the extra time and the effort to support those students.
Two things that pop into my head. The word holistic. So the education of our students is so much more than what happens in the classroom proper. And the other part is some language that's been coming out of some Christian Brothers documentation over the past year or two about going to the margins.
Yeah.
So maybe, Kurt, you could just take a minute or so and talk about what it means to go to the margins based on what you just said.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that the brothers have always gone to the margins, but within the past year and a half or so, with the new leadership in Rome within the Institute of the Brothers, the Superior General, Brother Armin Luistro, who was on this campus in the summertime, along with the General Council, which is the brothers from around the world that play leadership roles in Rome and who are kind of advisory to the Superior General, and together they make decisions about kind of the focus for the Institute. They've released a document called the Leavening Project, and the Leavening Project is essentially an encouragement and an inspiration for us to go back to our roots as a tradition, as a Lasallian charism, and to really go out and be intentional about seeking those who need support and assistance in the margins. Those are the people who are maybe on the peripheries, who are not getting attended to because they don't make the loudest noise, or
they're undocumented.
Yes, exactly. Or they don't have the financial means to pay for an education, or who are simply not kind of in the mainstream.
The way I often think about it is that instead of going and trying to take students away from another educational institution, we're going and collecting all the students who aren't being served at all.
Right.
And that's a very different way of thinking about it in my mind. A lot of institutions are like, oh, we want to increase our market share. We want to make sure that we get more of the students than our competitors do. We look at it from a different perspective. We look at it as who's being ignored and how do we then go serve them.
And also, we do still welcome the high-achieving students that other institutions want as well.
Oh, but there are plenty of these high-achieving students in the margins as well.
Oh,
That's
for
the other
sure.
part about it.
Well, and remember, another characteristic of Lasallian education is absolutely excellent education.
Right.
And so it doesn't surprise me that everybody wants to come to Lewis, or everybody wants to come to Lasallian schools, because just like back in De La Salle's time, people see a good thing and they want to be part of it. And so we get students from all kinds of different backgrounds who want to come here and be part of the Lewis experience. But I think in terms of going to the peripheries, going to the margin, the brothers have taught us that we look at the needs around us and we go there and try to address those needs. And we look around us and we say, boy, there are a lot of people that need a good quality education that can't afford it. So what can we do to make it accessible for them? And that's what we're doing.
Makes me proud to work here. And with that, the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Lewis University. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. The Lewis University name and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. This podcast was produced in the WLRA podcast studios at Lewis University. Visit lewisu.edu for more information about Lewis University. You've been listening to Science Coast with Mallory Havens and
Chris White.
our guest,
Kurt Schackmuth.
Thanks.
Bye.